Hi, everyone. It's good to see you again. Thank you for joining Epicenter NYC and our live stream. I think we have not seen you in at least 10 days. Hopefully you joined us over the weekend for our District 25 debate from the Epicenter. It was a wild success, but we're back with our vaccine live streams, our vaccine-focused live streams, I should say. Just some background on Epicenter for those of you joining us for the first time. Epicenter was launched in July of 2020. We were launched as a newsletter as a way to share tips and advice on getting through the pandemic. We tried to connect needs to people in our community who might be able to help. And that newsletter effort, which began really as communities helping each other, has blossomed and in a good way exploded across New York City. And in more recent months, we have been helping New Yorkers and by extension, their communities. I think the furthest we've extended reach is California, Kansas, and then relatives of folks overseas who are coming to the US to get their vaccines. But we've been helping book people for vaccines. We have been approached by more than 8,000 people for help and have booked more than 5,000 appointments and countless more through trainings and live streams like this one that really try to arm the public with information at a time that we think the more we can spread the good news around vaccines, the better it will be for everybody. So tonight we're really excited to join you on the cusp of some big news that people as young as 12 years old can now be vaccinated across the country. And certainly in New York, some of you were able to rush out right away, but some of you have some questions. And so we thought that this live stream might give us an opportunity to dive into some of those questions. Certainly as parents, we certainly we're asking questions about the vaccines for ourselves, but when it comes to our kids, I speak from personal experience that my questions get a whole lot more intense and it feels even more personal than myself in some ways. So we're joined tonight by not one, but two amazing pediatricians from South Slope Pediatrics. I want to welcome Dr. Cao and Dr. Copenhaver. Hi, Dr. Cao.
Hi, thank you for having us.
Oh, thank you. And hi, Dr. Copenhaver, how are you?
Good, thanks. How are you? Sorry, I'm muted.
I'm good. Oh, you're good. You're good. I'm glad we got you unmuted. It's great to have you both. Thank you so much. I know you've put in a long day in the office, so to continue your practice is a great service, and I think we'll all agree it's for a great cause. So we're very, very grateful for you being with us. After we talk to the pediatricians, we're going to have kind of a bridge session with some vaccine volunteers from around the country. So stay with us for that, probably at the halfway point, maybe around 8:30 or so. And then we'll let our doctors go enjoy their home lives, I hope, and we will continue our conversation with vaccine volunteers. And we have a really exciting announcement if you stick with us for the rest of the live stream. But I did want to start with our pediatricians. And I just kind of want you to take me back to last week. We'll start with Dr. Copenhaver. What did you think when you heard the news that 12-year-olds were now approved to get vaccinated? Just take me back to last week.
I mean, it was great. I wasn't expecting it on Friday. And in fact, Apple Watch got the alert and I was like, yes, like I did a little like fist, like excitement bump. I think it's incredible. I think it's really exciting for all of our, early teenagers, early and late preteens who are ready to go to camp, really excited to go back to school, to have the opportunity to be vaccinated and have a more normal summer, especially after last summer.
Yeah. Dr. Cao?
Yeah, I think, I'm always excited about protection because, we're New Yorkers. We lived through what it was like in March to have ambulances go by every 5 to 10 minutes and know that like a lot of those people that were on their way to the hospital were not going to be on their way back. And, we've had to adjust our lives a lot to mitigate the effects of this pandemic. One of the more subtle effects is actually in this age group, the kids who my preteens and my mid-teens, my 12 to 16-year-old kids, who actually are are facing mental health challenges at a greater rate than the kids in other age groups. So they feel like they should be adult and be able to process, but even somebody my age doesn't have the tools to deal with this. So something for a kid 12 to 16, 17 to have to go through this and kind of like internalize a lot of it, I think they're the ones who are bearing the brunt of the emotional carriage of a lot of this. So I'm very happy to have them protected.
I have to say, hold on. You guys hear an echo, or is it just me?
Yeah.
I can hear you.
You can hear me? Okay, sorry. I think it might have been that I just shared the Facebook post off of my own accounts, and I just stopped that. I'm so sorry. So I have a 16-year-old daughter, and I have to say that the moment, because that group was earlier, right? The moments after their vaccines, let's say at like the 2-week mark, there was such a change in socialization among teens that really does speak to kind of the mental health angle that you talked about. Can we just talk a little bit about what trends you've been hearing from families in the last few days? Have parents been calling you? What are the questions that they have? Dr. Copenhaver, we can start with you.
Definitely. I mean, I think we've been getting calls for a while with the 16 and ups when that was approved. I think for the older teens, it was like, yes, let's get them. And now that it's 12 and up, parents have more questions. And I think it's also making people become a little bit more aware that we might have a vaccine on the horizon for younger children as well. So they want to ask those questions now, start thinking about it now. I have started already in the past. I can think of the teens I saw just this week and late last week, and they were all coming in for their like 13-year-old checkups, and they all had gotten their COVID vaccine in the past.
Oh, wow, already. Okay.
Like we're like, oh yeah, I got it 2 days ago. And we're feeling great and really excited. And something that I've been asking all of my teens since COVID started and just kind of tweaking the way I talk about it is like, do you have hope? Like, do you have hope that this is going to get better? That you have hope about school next year, college, if that's where they're at? And I'm just hearing so many more say, yeah, like, of course, like I'm seeing my friends, I can be outside, and now with my vaccine, like I think I can have like, go back to like swim class or whatever they're doing, especially the kids that do like theater, art, anything that you have to be like a lot of people together and inside, they're so excited about. So that's thrilling. And then all the parents, there's just like a buzz, I think, of everyone getting excited and maybe a little apprehensive about making this decision for these younger and like mid-teens and then potentially the younger kids.
Dr. Cao, does that track with what you've been seeing and hearing?
Absolutely. I mean, our practice is a vaccinating practice, so we don't really have a lot of vaccine hesitancy. Because this is new and because it's emergency use, we do have people calling us and asking our take on it and how we feel about it. But I think most people have been super supportive about it.
Mm-hmm. That's great to hear. Just a reminder, if you're watching, we have a few dozen viewers right now, so please do leave questions in comments on whatever platform you're watching on. We have folks looking at Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. So if you have questions, just leave them in the comments and we'll be sure to answer them from our pediatricians while they're with us. This is your chance to call a doctor. And no offense to you guys, but sometimes when I call my doctor, it takes a few hours to get back to me. So this is like instant. You can get your answers. So we do look forward to hearing from you. Can I ask, you alluded to this a little bit, Dr. Cao, with people who have gotten COVID in that age group. I just wanted to be clear. Have you been seeing children in your practice get sick with COVID? How has that played out? And then we've been hearing reports just that over recent weeks and months, this was actually like a growing part of the population. I'm just wondering if that's true.
Well, so what we do know about COVID is that in the pediatric age range, the potential for more severe illness escalates with escalating age. So the infants actually do fairly well. It's the adolescents and the teens that we do worry about. I mean, in a communal setting, it's not just about the kids getting sick. It's about kids contracting and potentially going home and infecting somebody else. So there is a whole need for us as a community to suppress transmission rate. Of note, the group that's had the highest rate of positivity testing is actually that 0 to 4 age crowd right now. They're not getting any sicker. They're not sicker, but they're actually they've been testing positive more. And I think some of that is because this is a population that hasn't been exposed to to others for a long time. We've gotten comfortable. Brazen is the wrong word, but I think we're more comfortable like having our kids go to daycare, having our kids go to, and kind of weighing the risks. And I think the kids that haven't had exposure and don't have antibodies are actually starting to get exposed. So I think they're having a higher test positivity rate.
Wow, 0 to 4. I didn't know that was a growing.
It's on the nyc.gov graphic that I've been like obsessively following.
Yeah. And does that mean that parents, because I think for many of us, we're in families where, and this has been like the story of our vaccine rollout, where families were like, we want to wait. The husband is 66, the wife is 59. We're going to wait until we both qualify. And that's sort of how we've been booking because people like to go together. In our family, we have, one is 16, one is 9. That's just us. There's other families where they're all over the age group. Does the 0 to 4 piece of what you're describing, does it make you hesitate to send kids to daycare or into public settings in any way? This could be for either of you. Dr. Copenhaver, you looked like you might have had a reaction, and I saw you had a little one earlier. So I wonder what you think.
I am a very expressive person and don't have a poker face. So
totally with you on that.
The reason I made the reaction is this is the question we're getting, I don't know, probably at least 5 times a day, either in person at our checkups or on the phone. And it's, how do I make these choices for my younger children who aren't able to be vaccinated? Maybe one parent is vaccinated, both parents are vaccinated. It's always a balance, right? Like Dr. Cao said, these kids are still doing really well. But we are seeing more of them be positive, like when they get tested. And a lot of it is from a daycare setting or a group of kids coming together. And we're seeing a little bit more, not like huge rates that have me like gasping, but like I did just then, but more communal, like kid to kid transmission. So with that, I always talk about, well, what are our needs? Is this childcare because you have to work? Because that's real. Like our kids have to be taken care of. We can't all take care of them and work from home. That's my situation, Dr. Cao's situation. Like our kids have to be taken care of. So when our numbers in New York, thank goodness, are dropping, more of our adults are vaccinated. I think it's a reasonable option to have your kids go to daycare, to be in the playground, to like go out to the park. But if they get a sniffle or a cold and maybe someone else has a sniffle or a cold, depending on what's going on, we have to think about maybe it's worth getting them tested because that sniffle fever for one day could be COVID, could also just be a regular cold. So we can't just assume it's not. But luckily, the big thing I think that changes now that parents are vaccinated, if the kid comes home from daycare, it does end up being positive, the whole family doesn't have to quarantine. It doesn't have to shut down your whole family life where like no one can leave the apartment for, sometimes up to like 21 days because you have to do the whole quarantine of the child for 10 days plus then with the additional like 10 days for the parent, it was just those few months in in the spring, we were in a whole different situation, but the months after the holidays and like January through early March when more adults were vaccinated were really rough with our families that had like positive kids and negative parents. You were just really just locked down. So now that parents are vaccinated, it gives you flexibility to like decide if your kid gets sick, you can quarantine with them, but someone could like run out and go get Tylenol if they needed to.
Right. It's funny because every time my daughter just started a full day, she was in blended, she went from 2 days to 5 days. And every time I see your daughter was tested for COVID today, I'm so happy about it because I'm like, oh gosh, someone's like looking out for this on a regular basis. So I do think the the knowing, and also it's no longer the dread when we weren't vaccinated that I used to kind of get those emails, right? Because I'd be like, so just because we had promised, like a deeper dive on kids and vaccines, I'm wondering, Dr. Cao, if you could give us kind of just like walk us through how a vaccine works, right? What is this doing to our children?
Yep.
Is it doing the same thing to children who are developing than to me, who probably isn't going to get much taller, and will hopefully will shrink, but we'll be body positive today. And then how is a vaccine tested and approved? So how did we get to this place?
Sure. Okay, so the two options for COVID vaccines are one is the two that are mRNA based, is the Moderna and the Pfizer, of course, and both have been found to be effective. And the way that mRNA works is that, and this is the newest thing. Okay, we've studied coronavirus, we've studied vaccines for decades and decades and decades, and we know a lot about them. The new thing about all of this is that it's mRNA based, and it's simple and it's safe. Basically, what the mRNA vaccines do is they deliver in like a lipid capsule, basically material that is the genetic material that will tell a cell to produce a certain protein. So these, so what this does is the lipid capsule goes into the cytoplasm, which is not where the DNA of a cell is. So all these things about like changing your DNA and all that stuff, it's not actually possible, okay? Because the mRNA doesn't get to where the DNA is. So what it does is it gets into the fluid area outside the nucleus of a cell. It tells, it is basically the instructions to make a protein and expel it. And then what happens is your body's immune cells, the B lymphocytes and the T lymphocytes, will start to react to it. And then the T lymphocytes, after a couple of weeks, will develop like long-term memory for it. So 4 or 5 months down the line, if you see that protein again, and it's a major spike protein on the outside of the virus, that it will react to. So once it sees that protein again, it'll say, hey, I'm gonna attack it and like go ballistic on it and not allow it for it to replicate in the body. And then the mRNA that actually is in the vaccine, it disintegrates. It's so volatile that it falls apart very quickly. I don't know if it's a great example, but the best way that I can relate it to people is like, it's like the instructions of your IKEA furniture. It's so important, it's so crucial, it gives you such a map, but then when you're done with it, it's in a drawer and you never see it again. It's not part of your awareness anymore. So it'd be best, a better example of like your IKEA instructions like disintegrated, but I guess that's the best I can come up with.
I was gonna say, if your kids arrive with IKEA instructions, that would be something too. But so the question on that, Dr. Cao, is if a child, of course, is still growing and developing, just to be clear, it's the Pfizer dose that's been approved, but it's the same Pfizer dose that any grown-up is getting, a 70-year-old is getting, as a 12-year-old would be getting. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. At this point.
Okay. And and that does not, it sounds like you're saying it does not affect the DNA. It does not affect the parts of you that are growing. It's giving your body the instructions.
It's not possible. It does not have the, thank you, Ray Shemowski, my freshman biology teacher. It does not have like the reverse transcriptase. It does not have other enzymes that incorporate it into like DNA to produce proteins as part of the DNA and as part of like the genome.
Okay, Great. So just if you're joining us live, we're with two pediatricians from South Slope Pediatrics to talk about kids and vaccines. Stay with us. We're going to be talking to vaccine volunteers later, and we have some announcements around that. But please, if you do have questions, just post them in whatever platform that you are watching us on in the comments, and we will pose them to our experts who are with us here tonight. So I asked you about the doses. I wondered, we talked a little bit about younger children and the 0 to 4 where you're seeing the increases, which of course begs the question, when do you think vaccines will be available to children younger than 12? Dr. Copenhaver, do we want to go to you?
Sure. So I wish I had a crystal ball for a lot of reasons, but I think when I'm in my most optimistic, I'm hopeful for the fall. But it might be as late fall or winter. We know, so Pfizer and Moderna are both doing studies in younger children. Moderna started enrolling at their sites at 6 months and up back in February. And I think from what I understand of that study, they are looking at multiple doses and number of doses that are needed. So it may not be the full, like when you think like the dose, the amount, they're following that over time. If this trial is the same as that they've done with the younger kids, they usually enroll, I think the last I saw, they've enrolled about 6,700 kids. And it will be at least 3 months worth of data for them to collect. So if they started in February, that's March, April, that's through this month. Then we might have another month of them getting all the data together and then like letting us know, us being the general public and pediatricians, what's if it works, what's next steps, and then like approval, like asking for approval. So for the 12 and up to Pfizer, I think that took like 4 or 5 months. Now it's younger kids, so they might want to go longer. And this is all going to come from what data they get. So if they decide they want to extend it like 1 or 2 more months, whether that's for dosing reasons or safety, that may happen. And that's something they only really know internally, which is why I think there might be a caveat that it might be a little bit longer than how fast we've seen the like 16 and up and then the 12 and up come out, because we're always more careful with the kids, which is great. We want to be really careful with the kiddos. That being said, I think these, like Dr. Cao explained, these vaccines are incredibly safe, are really effective. But we're always really careful with children and making sure like we go that extra step to make sure that we are doing our due diligence to make sure that the children are going to be protected and safe when they get these vaccines.
Thank you. Dr. Cao, anything to add to that in terms of younger children?
Yeah, well, I want to address the fact that it was an emergency use recognition versus a licensure. Usually with licensing for vaccines, it takes months and months of the clinical data, and then you have a safety profile, and then you have, and it can get drawn out for like years, right? The reason that this was approved for emergency use was because this is a situation where where it killed like 500,000 people in a 10, 12 month window. So we couldn't really wait, right? So they approved things faster and fast tracked it, but the efficacy has been proven. And then the thing that has not been compromised was the safety window. Usually with vaccines, if you're going to have a significant reaction or a moderate reaction, it's going to happen in the first 6 weeks. So all of this safety data has been followed out at least 2 months before it's presented to be approved for use with the public. So there definitely has not been a risk as far or any kind of sacrifice or cutting corners as far as like the safety data.
That's helpful. And while we're on the subject of younger kids, I'm just wondering if you can address, again, these are very selfish questions. You can like read right through them. But if you have, hypothetically, kids who are vaccinated and kids who are not yet vaccinated, and friends are now playing together, how do those two groups interact? Like, do you guys have a set of rules that you're giving your patients? Can you walk us through how these interactions between the unvaccinated younger children and the vaccinated world should go down? Dr. Cao, you look enthusiastic, so I'm gonna turn it over to you, and then we'll ask Dr. Copenhaver for her thoughts.
Actually, the CDC actually has some guidelines for us, but if you're vaccinated, you're basically able to maintain, like, go back to like normal life as far as you're concerned. But the other things that you need to take into consideration are, like, if you're gonna be around individuals who might be susceptible, if you have grandparents who are high risk, if you have immunocompromised or even younger kids with cardiopulmonary risk factors, then you still should be really careful. That being said, I think the transmission rate outside is like 1%. So I think I think it's fair to say that you don't, unless you're in a crowded situation like a concert or something like that, even an outdoor concert. I think the risk of you contracting something is low, and bringing it home to someone else is also low. Inside, if it's just 2 kids and like similar age groups, no risk factors, and one of you is vaccinated, I think that person should be able to be without a mask.
Yeah, that's helpful. Dr. Copenhaver, anything to add to that?
I echo everything that Dr. Cao said, but also I think something that's really encouraging is that we haven't, I think the big thing that was also really scary about COVID was that this asymptomatic carrier that could then infect someone else. So you never really knew if the person you were, and the data with vaccines is that doesn't exist when you're vaccinated. That there is almost at least all the data we have right now, almost a nil chance that if you're fully asymptomatic and vaccinated, that you're gonna accidentally spread it to someone who's vaccinated. So I think that's also incredibly encouraging, and that so that a small group of kids, or if your older child going to you, if your older child's friend has come over and they're both vaccinated, but your younger kids around them who's not vaccinated, everyone's asymptomatic, I think we're all fine.
That's helpful. That's actually that's exactly the scenarios that we've been going through in the house. So that's helpful to know. Have parents asked you, I'm assuming your practice cannot yet offer the vaccine. Do you have any word on when that might come down? We're also hearing this from families. Even 12-year-olds are afraid of shots. They don't want to go to some of these sites. They trust their doctor. I mean, react to that and tell me what you're thinking.
We are, my office, my administrative staff has been working very hard to be approved, and we're approved. We're waiting for refrigeration and then make our orders for the vaccines. Smaller practices, the Pfizer vaccine is probably not going to be an option, just because of the refrigeration requirements that it takes. And then with those doses, you actually have to order multiple hundreds at a time. And in a smaller practice, that's not that it's not feasible. It's just not going to be logistically possible to get them all out before they expire and waste them. So we don't want to do that. We will very likely in the next few weeks be able to give and preserve the Moderna vaccine. In that meanwhile, what we're telling our folks is, if you have a chance to go get it somewhere else, get it. We're happy to have you get it. It's not like we're doing this for the business. It's go get protected. We want our kids to be safe and healthy, and we want their families to be safe and healthy.
And Dr. Copenhaver, do parents ask you, where should I take my kid? Have you heard that question? And do you have an answer? Yeah. So what's the answer?
I mean, the answer, like Dr. Cao said, pretty much anywhere you feel comfortable enough and that you can get the appointment. So we are New Yorkers. We are highly motivated. So we've had parents take their kids out to Queens to the CVS, they can get it. We've got some local pharmacies that are offering the vaccine. So we're really lucky that we can just stay down the street. Can I name drop New York Pharmacy has vaccine appointments that we've even been able to help parents get their kids vaccinated at those pharmacies, and then also the mass injection sites as well, if there's been openings there too. So I think for the most part, the families that have like really wanted to jump on it and get it quickly, we've helped them. If they've called us, we've been able to like direct them to. And like the New York City websites have also been really impressed with the ability to like find location sites on the websites, and then through services like Epicenter has been really helpful as well.
Yeah, we thought, though, I have to say, we thought we would hear every time there's been a big opening in eligibility, we're always prepared for a rush. And I was a little nervous because we didn't really hear that last week. And I just wondered if it's because people were, as you said, like able to walk in, able to word of mouth here where we have more pop-up sites now. I couldn't really put my finger on it. The other thing I've just been hearing, like I'm still hearing of parents who are starting to take their kids this week. And I just wonder if it was the hesitation because it's people's kids as opposed, I don't know. I really don't know. But I was a little puzzled because I didn't feel a rush of bookings as we normally do. So.
I wonder, I just think maybe it wasn't the same fear, really. Like, because the younger kids have been doing relatively well, and how as the age escalates, the severity of the illness has seemed to escalate, or we know it escalates. So I think, adults are high risk populations, then like the healthy young adults all crushed in. And then I think the teens were really, really motivated and parents motivated. I think 12 and up felt like a little bit more breathing space. Like it's going to be okay if we have to wait like, a week to get this vaccine, so we can take the time to look and find maybe a convenient location versus the like whatever I need to do to get that vaccine. I know that for us, even us doctors, when we were we were like eligible in January, it felt like a lot of like, we need to do this like right now. Like this is in a place where it is dire. And I think because people have been getting vaccinated in New York, which is awesome, and our numbers are dropping, it does, I hope it's not hesitancy. There might be some more questions, and they want a little more time to answer those questions. So I hope this helps with that. But maybe just that, like, that pressure we've all been feeling on our shoulders, on our heads, on our backs, they're just like, it's like lifting a little bit. So maybe there's a little bit more space for people to get those vaccines in before like summer activities and stuff like that. I hope.
It's a great point. It's a really good point because Epicenter also, a big chunk of the 5,000 plus folks we've helped get vaccinated are restaurant workers. And it wasn't that they were hesitant. It's just that they were like, I've been working all year long. Like I can wait 2 weeks. And it was such a different experience from people who were kind of the stories we heard of more often, working from home, really cooped up inside, a very different narrative. And those people were, the ones that would drive anywhere to get there. So I think that's a really important point that, there's been some folks have been in this state for some time. So I do have questions on children and teachers, but I think we're going to try to bridge with our vaccine volunteers because one of them is a teacher. And so I think that'll be an interesting perspective to add to the discussion. So I would want to welcome Jeannie Pinder, who's the founder of Clear Health Costs and the kind of co-conspirator around putting some of our vaccine volunteers nationally together. Elena Tate, who's our volunteer with Epicenter and the bridge to South Slope Pediatrics, who we're so grateful to have with us between Dr. Copenhaver and Dr. Cao. And then Maria Peterson, who is a teacher in Maryland, right?
Maryland, yes.
Yep. And with 7 other teachers, so a group of 8 women have vaccinated more than 10,000 people in the Washington, D.C., Maryland and Virginia area. It's called La Casa Vacunas. Vaccine Hunters is what it is in English. It's like a heroic, inspiring effort that we're going to hear about in a little bit, and we'll get to those stories. But Maria, while I have you, what I was going to ask the doctors, and we'll let them go, I swear, in like 2 minutes, but we've started to see that the vaccine will be required for some summer camps, for various children's activities, maybe even for some schools. there hasn't necessarily been the same pressure on teachers to mandate that among teachers. And I just wondered from the I'll turn to the pediatricians first, and then we'll get to Maria. I'm just wondering if you know why that schism is, if there's any risk in that between kind of the same question I asked between the vaccinated and unvaccinated worlds, and, you know, what the fall and school reopening might look like. I'm throwing a lot at you, but these are definitely the issues parents are talking about on the playground.
Can I take that one?
Yeah, go for it, Dr. Cao.
So, you know, I think that teachers getting vaccinated is super important. I think that I don't like mandating anything, just because, like, in pediatrics, nothing is black and white. Some things we do now in 30 or 40 years the evidence may show us otherwise, but we behave and act on what the evidence currently shows us, right? We do have a vaccine policy at our office, just because, you know, when we were opening up, there were babies dying of things, actively dying. This was just 9 years ago, of things that completely preventable, and nothing on the fault of the parents that were bringing them to the doctor's office, because they were all under 2 months before they could get that vaccine, right? So I think the question is really more of the mandating question is really more of a legal question rather than a medical question. I think because it's emergency use versus a licensed vaccine, I think that's a question more for the lawyers, as what we have and what we are seeing rolling out as far as the evidence. There's not a lot of fear for the safety of the vaccines. There's not reason to fear the safety of the vaccines. But I think the mandating question is going to have to be for the legal department, really.
That's super helpful. So Maria, I'm going to ask you, you've been in the middle of this massive vaccine effort. You're a teacher yourself. Just kind of take us personally. How do you feel with children? I don't know if you teach. Do you teach middle school? Is the children that are?
I teach high school, but
you teach high school. Okay, so your kids are affected by it. Yeah. So just tell us how you're feeling, and what would your preference be for the fall to make you feel safe?
I think for the safety of the child and others around, like they were explaining earlier, I think if everybody's vaccinated, that would be the way to go. That way, everybody's safe. The issue is they're not mandating teachers to get vaccinated. Most of the teachers I know are getting vaccinated. Most of them are vaccinated. It's only a handful that are waiting, and they're waiting. It's not that they're saying they're not going to get vaccinated. They just decided they're going to wait. Right now, we've been working with the Board of Education where we work in Montgomery County. Montgomery County, keep in mind, it's the 10th largest school district in the U.S. So, you know, we're pretty big. We've been pushing for the school system to set up clinics at the different middle schools and high schools and get kids vaccinated before they go for the summer, home for the summer. And there's been some resistance from the school system, which is kind of strange, because if they were helping teachers by having clinics specific for teachers, why are we not doing that for children? And I think, like Dr. Cao was saying, you know, the mandate versus, you know, you're not required. It's not when you register at school that you have to have all your shots, you know, like when you register for school. This is a little different. And because it's something new, I also think they're being very careful about, you know, what if something happens and here we are mandating all these children to get vaccinated and something happens. So I think they're just on the cautious side for now.
That's helpful. So before we let our doctors go, I just wondered if you had closing thoughts or anything that we didn't get to. Dr. Copenhaver, we could start with you and then let Dr. Cao have the last word.
I think just in general, the vaccines and just what we're doing right now, answering questions, you know, it's a lot. We've been through a lot as a country. We've been through a lot as New Yorkers. And we're all, I think, really excited, and we can see the light at the end of that tunnel, and that light is vaccines. So, and I think a lot of adults are getting vaccinated. Unfortunately, a lot of as many adults to get herd immunity, it just doesn't seem to be happening right now. So it's even more important, I think, long term, to get the kids vaccinated as well. I know parents asking, like, is it really necessary for younger kids to get vaccines? And the way I'm thinking about it right now, with the evidence that we have about these vaccines, which are really safe and really effective, is that getting your child vaccinated, even if for your kid might have just been a sniffle, for another kid might be worse. The multi-system inflammatory syndrome in children, while rare, still happens. We've seen it in our patients. And the more people that coronavirus infects, the more chance it has to mutate and make those new variants. Even if for you it was a mild case, it could mutate inside your person, become a new variant that then becomes a whole different thing. So the fewer people that this virus can infect, the better. And the way we infect less people is by getting people vaccinated. So, either get excited about getting your kid vaccinated when the opportunity rises, or ask those questions now while we have the time, because we have a few more months probably before the younger kids are up for their chance. So you can get those questions answered and make some decisions for yourself and your family.
Thank you. Dr. Cao?
I agree. I completely agree with what Dr. Copenhaver said. The best chance of us defeating this and not allowing it to become endemic to where we have to vaccinate all the time, like the flu vaccine, like every year, like the flu vaccine, is that we get herd immunity, and we still may have to do that. But because it's an RNA virus, it doesn't have a lot of the kind of like the censoring of its own genome. So it actually it's mutated multiple times since it started in our world, right? And that's why we're having all these variants. And at some point, at this point, our vaccines are effective against them for the most part. But at some point, we may get a mutation that is not going to be effective, and that's going to be some scary stuff, because the efforts that we put in and the knowledge that we have may not be effective, and then we have to start the game all over again.
Thank you. So you do have some fans. Somebody just asked if this video will be saved online. So yes, the answer is yes. And I do think that's a good reminder. So many of these live streams we do are actually shared extensively because people will have these questions in the course of conversation. And at Epicenter, we always say we're not doctors, but we can connect you to people who are. And so we're so glad that you were with us tonight. Thank you to South Slope Pediatrics, Dr. Cao, Dr. Dennis Copenhaver. Have a good night, and we're going to continue the conversation with our vaccine volunteers. Take care. Thank you. All right, ladies, it's just us. Unless, Jeannie, did you get an MD in the 40 minutes or so you were waiting for us? Oh, you're muted. You can't even make fun of me.
No, I didn't. Okay. I figured you probably did.
No. So we are gathered because a few weeks ago, we got together a group of folks who, as Epicenter has been, as La Casa Vacunas has been, have been helping in a volunteer capacity just get shots in arms. And so I just wanted to hone in on all of the amazing work of the folks you're looking at right now. And just get a sense, we'll kind of round robin this and be super efficient on what is the ground view from where you are right now? What is it looking like? Are people still clamoring for vaccine? And what's the situation? Jeannie, should we start with you? Because I feel like you also, in the time that we have, you could give you a little bit of the overview of how Clear Health Costs has also been covering this.
Yeah, thanks. So we originally began as a journalism company focusing on health costs, how murky they are. We pivoted last March to cover COVID all the time. And it's been very interesting testing long COVID. We've written a lot about the vaccine hunt. And it's been really fascinating to watch the work of the vaccine volunteers and how you have managed to get shots into arms in the most efficient possible way. In many cases, times where actually government can't seem to make it happen. It's been you guys. It's been Maria, Elena, Mitra. Your troops have been making things happen in a way that government can't. And it's been really inspiring and exciting to watch how journalism has managed to solve this problem. That's a really complicated one that doesn't have any one solution, but has many solutions. So hats off to you, and thank you for your work.
Thank you. Maria, what's it looking like down in the DMV? Do people, is it the same clamoring for vaccine that you were telling us about a few months ago?
So back then we were hunting for vaccines, but now we have shifted. We are hunting for arms. The vaccines are available, but what we have seen is that there's still a lot of need, like we call it boots on the ground. At this point, it has shifted to an outreach mission. Only 15% of the Latinos in the county where we are focusing on have been vaccinated, which is pretty low. Like they were saying earlier, the doctors, those are the people that are the ones that were working through the pandemic. Those are the ones working restaurants, or the frontline workers, the essential workers. So 15% is pretty low, and then the government shares with us all these walk-in clinics, and we have these activities, and we have this, and we have a vaccine. But they're not realizing that at this point, everybody has vaccines. It's get out there and find the people, knock on doors. We've been telling the county officials, hire census workers. That's what the census does. They knock on doors. Us ourselves, just 3-4 days ago, we went to Home Depot and we had 40 vaccines, and it's a small clinic with a doctor that was going to work with us. Right there at Home Depot, we signed up 30 workers that were sitting under a tree just waiting to be picked up for a day job. And then the day of the clinic, the Sunday, 2 days ago, at the end of the day, we had 10 vaccines. We went back to Home Depot and we were giving shots in the parking lot at Home Depot. And then right across the street, there was a food truck, a pupusa truck. And the lady who runs the truck, she stuck her arm out the window in the truck because she couldn't stop, to get all that done. We came to her and we gave her the vaccine. Those are 40 people that would not have gotten vaccinated if we had not gone to them, answered questions. And their hesitancy, there were very basic questions. That's all they had. Like, it's nothing earth-shattering that they wanted to know. They're like, can I drink later tonight? Am I going to be sterile? Like, all these things they have heard that are not true, but because the doctor talked to them and went to them, like I said, we were able to get them vaccinated. And then for the second round, we told them, you are here in 3 weeks. We'll come back here. We'll go back to the pupusa truck in 3 weeks. We will go back to the tree under Home Depot, and we'll be there to give you your second shot.
So I was going to ask what vaccine you gave them. It sounds like it was Pfizer.
Moderna.
Oh, it was Moderna, and then you'll go back in 3 weeks.
June 13th. June 13th, we go back.
Okay.
Yes.
So in a month. Okay, got it.
In a month. Yeah. So it was Sunday.
This is like literally how my brain works.
I know. But that's what needs to happen. Now we have to go out and find these people, because those are the ones that still need to get vaccinated, but they're not going to go to CVS. They're not going to go to the walk-in clinics. We need to go to them.
So I'm going to put Elena on. Oh, sorry. Did I just interrupt someone? Yeah, go for it.
About VaxFest?
Yeah, well, I was gonna like do a big drum roll, but before we get to VaxFest, Elena, I am going to put you on the spot, because Elena was at our debate on Saturday morning, and it was hosted in a church. And like after the forum was over, Elena was like nowhere to be found, and I found her in the pastor's office, convincing the pastor to host a vaccine clinic. And so I do think, to segue from what Maria is describing of giving shots in the parking lot, Elena, do you want to just tell us what your efforts, you've really shifted over the last few weeks to a very similar outreach strategy, and just again, tell us what the ground view looks like. We're with the same organization, but I assure you, Elena has a much better ground view than I do at this point.
Well, I like following Maria, because everything she says, I just say, yes, exactly. That's exactly. So it was hard to get the appointments. Now we're trying to get the people. So, people have basic questions. People have issues of access. So sometimes they need an incentive that's appropriate. So now we're shifting into, all the clamoring is over, the rushes and waves of people. More vaccines seem to be being produced and distributed, lots of different brands to choose from. So now we're really trying to work on bringing the vaccine where people are, trying to figure out, what languages they speak, what their challenges are. The hesitancy conversation leaves out the real issue of obstacles. If you work 7 days a week, that's not hesitancy, that's you can't go. So if you come to the person's work, if you come to their church, you know, you really open up opportunities for people. If you speak their language, if you have a doctor or nurse, you know, actually answering their questions before they are sitting in the chair, that gets people, you know, to say yes.
I'm going to ask each of you and then we'll give you our surprise, which Elena previewed a little bit. What's been the biggest surprise in terms of covering COVID or vaccines? And Jeannie, I'm going to turn to you.
Yeah, well, I think one of the surprises for me has been, again, this sort of ability of journalists to solve the problem. When Elena was talking about objections, people's objections are different. The obstacles are many and varied. There are people who can't take time off work. We can address that. There are people for whom there's a relative who's very anti-vax. And understanding what that obstacle is and then overcoming it is really, it is a journalistic endeavor, I think, because you have to listen to people. Like, what was it that you said? Oh, you said that you're not opposed to vaccine, you just don't have access to it. I get it. Okay, so we'll bring it to you. And to be able to understand these many varied things that are sometimes lumped under the rubric of vaccine hesitancy, it could just simply be an access problem. And it's been very interesting to see how you guys have approached that and how you're solving it. One arm at a time, one mobile unit at a time, and to have the energy and the regard for your community and connections to your community that allow you to make these things happen. I just find it, you know, unbelievably inspiring. And I want to thank you again for that.
Go for it, Maria. Go for it.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, Elena. I wasn't sure.
Elena, go ahead. Elena, go ahead.
Just to piggyback, so one access problem is actually access to information. And I just wanted to mention, you know, the pediatricians that were on are my son's pediatricians. And I feel like he's so lucky to have them because he's 5 and he keeps asking, like, when am I going to get my vaccine? When am I going to get my medicine? I want the germs to go away. I want, you know, and he's had the privilege of having these great doctors his whole life. So he really trusts them, trusts medicine. And I think this is you know, obviously the vaccine is just one issue. There are larger issues in society, but one issue is access to information, access to healthcare. If you have communities that have not had this access, then there may be more hesitancy, but it's really an issue of access.
Yes, and people want the vaccine, you know, because I keep saying, oh, people don't want the vaccine. There are people that want the vaccine, but they just don't know how to do it. They might not speak the language. They're just Spanish speakers who don't speak English, so they don't know where to go. We have people that we have helped who are illiterate. Once we make a connection with somebody in the community, then that person becomes like the connector. And then that person is the one that has been reaching out to us and said, hey, I have these people that reach out to me today. Can you help them? So it takes a village, you know, something that became at the beginning, we need to help people find vaccines, you know, and you all ladies know this, from helping to find vaccines to realizing, wait, upper middle class are the ones that are getting them. What about the Black and brown communities? And then it's like, okay, what about, language? And then you deal with the language. And then it's like, wait, people are being turned away because they're being profiled and they're dealing with profiling. And then we ended up correcting the grammar in PrepMod, which is the official state of Maryland form, that website where people go to make their appointment, where the grammar was atrocious. So from one simple task of, okay, we're going to help people find vaccines, it has become this whole thing, you know, all the way to working with corporate pharmacies. So it's just amazing, you know, and my husband said to me, you know, when vaccines are available, like, you know, you're done, like your job is done. Well, vaccines are available, but we are still in the middle of it. We're still hosting clinic. This Saturday, we have a clinic with 200 vaccines, trying to bring people in. So it's not over. Just because there's vaccines out there, there's so much we all have to do out there to bring more people.
That's helpful. Maria, it sounds like you got to your biggest surprise, but I want to make sure you don't feel glossed over. Was that what it was, the kind of the tentacled nature of the outreach that you described?
It's just amazing how, something that happened to be a small little thing has become, this huge project. And now that we have made so many connections with people in the community, council members and community leaders, we have also decided that we're going to, do a nonprofit, just because it's like we have all these tools, like let's do something with them. And as teachers, having the summers off and having more flexibility, we want to do something, for the kids.
It's so incredible. And you guys it's 10,000. Is that the number you're at?
It's more like 15 at this point, because we have created Google Forms that we, just like Elena has, we have done outreach to Spanish restaurants. We have done outreach to Spanish churches. So with that Google link, with that Google form, the parishioners are feeling more comfortable. Again, it's probably the same thing Elena's seeing. We have people that said, I only get vaccinated if it's at my church. Like tomorrow we have second dose clinic at an Adventist church. And a lot of them said, if I don't get vaccinated at my church, I want to get vaccinated, because there's that level of trust and familiarity and the language, having somebody speak Spanish to them and answer all the questions and seeing the face and, that person looks just like me. Okay, I'm going to get vaccinated. That makes a big difference, So yeah.
So if I had a drum roll, I would play it. I really should have queued up some music or something. So Maria, we're going to stay with you and you're going to tell us the big news, which is VaxFest 2021. What is VaxFest 2021?
So VaxFest is an awesome idea that came out of just us thinking about, and we have rounded up like all the other groups all over the East Coast for now. We're branching out to Chicago and West Coast, and we want to bring more people to it. So the kickoff, we decided we're going to kick off Memorial Day weekend, because everybody knows it's the beginning of summer, happiness, transition, a little breath of fresh air, and now coincidentally, the CDC with the whole mask mandate, being lifted, we're kind of turning the page a little bit, being careful and cautious, but turning the page. So VaxFest 2021 is the kickoff day of awareness of, hey, celebrate that you got vaccinated, share your picture of you maybe showing your Band-Aid or, like a little far away from your card if you want, on your little vaccine card. Also, maybe that's the day that if you have been hesitant about getting vaccinated, maybe that is the day that you're like, you know what, I'm going to do it. And then you get up and you go to the local nearest, walk-in clinic. There's so many of them at this point. Or maybe just decide that day that, you know what, I can't go right now to get vaccinated, but I'm going to make an appointment. I have decided. So we just want, hopefully that day, numbers of vaccines, of people getting vaccinated skyrocket. Because like they've been saying, we need herd immunity. We don't want people to continue getting sick. We need to beat this pandemic that we've been, dealing with for over a year. So yeah, so we want to spread it all over and have these.
Amazing. It's so amazing. So I mentioned we gathered a few weeks ago, and as soon as Maria mentioned this idea, the whole Zoom call just kind of lit up. All right, here's your drum roll. All right. I mean, I got it. I eventually got it. So
everything was a little out of order, but
it's all right. It's all right. Which is kind of how the vaccine rollout's gone, guys, too. So it's all right. Jeannie, you kind of lit up in that Zoom call that I was just referencing, and I wondered what was it about VaxFest that that kind of inspired that in you, and how are you thinking about this?
That call was inspiring on many different levels, seeing how all of the people who were on the call were learning from Maria, learning from Elena, learning from each other. Like, we did this thing and it worked out really well, or we did this thing and it didn't quite work, but we learned something from it and we can share our learnings with other people. Like how the church connection worked for the folks up in Poughkeepsie in Dutchess County, and how Jane Duncan, our friend in the West Village, had cracked the code on getting homebound people vaccinated. It was just this really inspiring thing to see all of these people who share this same goal and who have different experiences but are working on the same problem could really light up a Zoom call like that, and then settle on VaxFest, which I think, Maria, as you know, I think it's a brilliant idea, and we're really glad to be a part of it.
And so your greatest evangelist in Queens is Elena, even though she lives in Brooklyn. So Elena, jump in on VaxFest and what your plans are so far.
Every time I leave the house, I organized another VaxFest event. It just happens. So yeah, we have the church in Queens. When they do their food distribution, they've welcomed us in their beautiful garden. So it'll be outside, safe. They have 500 families. So we're going to show up with 30 vaccines, and hopefully they'll, create the excitement, like, oh, first come, first serve, come on. And we're going to have prizes and giveaways, and of course, translators and information. And then if they can't get the 30, we can easily take them to a close by city site. Luckily, we're in New York City. We have many, many, many sites.
I think it's great. I mean, it's just been wonderful to see the literal evangelizing, but through community, meaning the church that Elena's talking about. It's, on their grounds with their people. And I think the other piece that we've been talking about as a group is that VaxFest can really be what a community needs it to be, because different communities have different needs and different ways of communicating. So for some communities, freebies will work. For others, it just has to be like, I'll get this shot right now if it's right in front of me. For others, they want to book far in advance. They just didn't know that they could. And so what I love about this idea is that it sort of puts the idea of VaxFest really not to be lofty, but in the hands of every American, right? It basically says you get to be a part of the solution, by giving people information or access to their vaccine. So Epicenter is super, super proud to be a part of it. My last question for you guys, it's already 9 o'clock, so I do want to let you all get to your families as well. I want you to pretend that President Biden is listening, and that Surgeon General Vivek Murthy is listening, and that our COVID task force head, Andy Slavitt, is listening. What do you want them to know, and what would you say to them? Should I start with, who wants to go first?
I'll start.
Go, Maria.
I would say there's still a lot of need. There's people that are homebound. We need like vaccine mobiles. We joke about the ice cream man can hit every street in the neighborhood. There's still people out there that need help. Somebody getting to them to get their vaccine. That's the main thing I would say.
Elena.
Well, I think one issue is how difficult it is for the small practices, like Dr. Cao mentioned, the medical practices, to get Pfizer. The refrigeration is very expensive. The minimum doses is very high. Also, now with the demand, it seems like maybe the vaccine companies can put fewer doses in each vial, but they're actually increasing it. So from 10 to 14, once you open the vial, if you don't have 14 people right there, you waste it. And some pharmacies are turning people away if they just have one, because it's not worth it for them to open the vial. So maybe just thinking through a little bit more about the distribution and how to make it easier to get each person, even one arm getting the shot in.
That's a great point. Jeannie, what would you say?
Yeah, I guess I would invite Andy Slavitt and the Surgeon General and even the President to come to our next Zoom meeting of the Vaccine Collab to listen to the electricity and all of the ideas that are being shared back and forth. As people who are really close to the ground here, we have a lot of ideas of things that you could do to solve that problem. We are hearing from other people who want to join the Vaccine Collab too. We have some folks in Iowa, possibly Arizona, Illinois, California, people who are doing this work on the ground, learning things, sharing information, and sort of crowdsourcing and lifting each other up to solve this problem. So for the next meeting, I'd like to see, Andy Slavitt or the Surgeon General come, or somebody else who wants to listen to what it is that we can teach.
That's amazing. We can follow up and invite them. If I could just add my 2 cents, one is to just pick up on the thread that Elena mentioned on the doses and the vials. Some doctors in New York City have let us know that the state has told them to not worry as much about having to use all doses, but just get the doses in the arms. Don't worry about the waste. And I think that message does help alleviate some of what Elena's talking about, because the pharmacies indeed are hesitating if they think that they won't get more vaccine to keep serving the public. So I think just the messaging around that. Speaking of extra doses, on behalf of so many families who we at Epicenter have served, including my own, a heartfelt plea to keep fighting for global vaccine equity and to make sure that any vaccines that we can get overseas, any technology transfer, and any patents that would help our neighbors. We do think of our neighborhood, especially here, as an extension of Jackson Heights as much of the world. And so that would be my plea to those individuals. So before we go, any other thoughts? I'm just going to open it up, and then we can wish everyone a good night. But I just want to make sure that you all got to weigh in.
I would say the one thing I want to add is, luckily for us, we've been working with private hospitals like Holy Cross Hospital in Maryland, and we've been able to host vaccine clinics. We tried through the county, through the government, and the red tape and the bureaucracy is so big that we ended up having to walk away from it. And, when you have an urgency of a vaccine, when you have people who've been in their homes for over a year in fear of this virus that it could kill them, there's no time for that. Like this process needs to move faster, and the county officials, state officials need to find a way to accelerate, whatever it is they're working on.
Yeah, we spent much of the day today trying to put together a permit application for VaxFest, and it's a lot of red tape. I hope we get our permit.
So I should have said, and anyone who has anything to say to Bill de Blasio. So Elena, we'll try to get that message to him.
And I had one last thing to mention too. VaxFest is not just one day. We want to kick it off on Memorial Day, but everybody can have their own VaxFest throughout the entire summer. It could be a TikTok festival. It could be, pupusa truck in your park on the 4th of July. But, to have the opportunity for everybody to join in on this, I think is a great opportunity. We look forward to more fun this summer.
That's a really great note. So with that, I think we can conclude our live stream for the evening. Thank you, Jeannie. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Elena. Thank you again to South Slope Pediatrics for being with us earlier in the evening. And thank you to all of you for joining us. I also have just a few other thank yous for folks behind the scenes. Stefan Kaplan and Janelle Zagala, Nathan Moko on design, and Danielle Hyams, who's live tweeting every word here. I don't know, Danielle, if you're going to thank yourself in the tweets, I think you should. But mostly thanks to all of you again for joining us. And we will see you next week. Join us on Wednesday at 5 p.m. The Unmuted, our sister publication, is doing a really important discussion. It's called Run the World: What Women Should Demand from a Post-Pandemic World. And I think we've already seen a group of women tonight who've been demanding quite a bit from the pandemic world that we're in. So this will focus on our future. We'd love to see you joining us. That's again, Wednesday, May 26th at 5 p.m. And that will be our live stream before the Memorial Day weekend. And don't forget to sign up for our newsletter, epicenter-nyc.com. Follow us in all the places. Follow these brilliant fellow volunteers, kind of thinkers, fellow journalists, community builders, all in one. And on that note, thank you so much for being with us. Good night.